Brexit, as always, in the newspapers today. Joining us with their pick of the stories, the broadcaster Johnny Gould and the journalist and writer Nabila Ramdani. Welcome back,
Morning
both.
Again.
Nabila, in the Express, time for optimism, says the Prime Minister Theresa May. Ireland perhaps thinking a little bit differently this morning, as Darren says, a bit more trouble brewing there. But what's the Express's take?
Well, it's quite a positive headline, I have to say, ahead of Theresa May's statements in the Commons today, where she will declare that there's a new sense of optimism as she enters round two, a crucial phase in the EU or in the Brexit negotiations, focusing on trade talks mainly. And really the question is she winning at this point? And my opinion is that, yes, of course, to the extent that you can be winning in this extraordinarily difficult business. And I have to say she's doing rather well. It's such a divisive issue, you know, one that inflames so many passions and brings out all sorts of resentment and anger. And there is no possibility of any politician just sailing through this process. And what she's showing is that she's just, you know, a very pragmatic politician blustering through this whole process. But of course, anything can happen.
Time for optimism, says the Prime Minister. Johnny, you've chosen a story in the Times that perhaps is a little less optimistic as we move on to trade negotiations, which could prove trickier than the subject of the Irish border.
You're right, SJ. The headline, Canada plus plus plus, is what he said on Andrew Marr yesterday. The biggest word in this headline, though, is could. Could mean a mass of red tape. What David Davis is hoping for is a Canadian-style deal with the EU where we take the best of Canada, and Japan and South Korea, let's put it all together and add to those bits of good deals where all the tariffs were removed, bits which include the service industry, that is to say banking, and of course our service economy, which is so biased now post-industrially. Senior European diplomats and officials have said, however, that Britain would need to accept a series of EU rules. And as a caveat to this headline and this story, the Canadian deal with the EU, signed a couple of months ago, took 7 years to negotiate.
We haven't got that time.
We haven't got that. March the 29th, 2019 is when they blow the full-time whistle and we leave the European Union.
It just shows that we're moving away from ideology to the technical reality and the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts, effectively.
Which is good.
Nabila, in the Telegraph, the Israeli Prime Minister tells Palestinians to face up to reality over Jerusalem.
Yes, indeed. That follows, you know, Donald Trump's announcement to recognise Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I have to say I found that quite a reckless and indeed provocative move, especially that the whole point of the peace process is that both nations, that is to say Israel and Palestine, would have their capitals in Jerusalem, and by ignoring that historical, requirement, Trump has not only displayed ignorance, but he's also, proved to be a bit malicious by ignoring a large section of the humanity that lives in that area, and unfortunately by siding with one side in arguably the most the most serious diplomatic problem in the world today. He has already caused horrific problems, we've seen in Sky News reports, for example, the protests that it has generated already, and he will continue to generate.
Yeah, Johnny, I know you've been watching this closely. What's your take?
Well, it doesn't preclude a settlement deal where the capital of Jerusalem isn't for both nations, but it is part of a neoconservative approach to peace, which acknowledges or believes that the two-state solution is dead, that there are too many failed states around Israel's border that can secure a peace, a reliable peace with Israel, and so therefore to arrange for a new humanitarian arrangement for Gaza to be extended into North Sinai, for Israel to retain Jerusalem as its capital and build the West Bank as its major hub without the movement of population. There is a strategy to this. It's not a knee-jerk pronouncement by Trump.
But I think that there's always a stumbling block in all this over these negotiations, is that meanwhile all the more illegal building programs are progressing on Palestinian land and Palestinian occupation as well, and with all the human rights breaches that go unabated, and that's
someone's got to have a vision for this, because rockets are being fired into Israel as well. someone has to have a vision which reaches out. I don't think an honest brokerage that America has pursued in the Obama era is actually satisfactory. And it doesn't mean necessarily that Jerusalem will only be the capital of Israel in any settlement. It does leave this open.
There has certainly been a stalemate over the issue.
It's definitely opened the doors to a different way, hasn't it? Let's wait and see. Johnny, Nabila, thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break and we'll have more stories from inside today's papers coming up after that. Johnny and Nabila looking through the papers for us today. And Nabila, an alarming front page for The Sun today. Russia thugs free to wreck the World Cup next summer.
Yes, indeed, it's an exclusive, interesting story by The Sun, basically saying that Russian officials had barred 391 hardcore yobs from the games ahead of the 2018 World Cup, of course. But many of those banned are now will be free to participate and indeed attend the tournament. And I must say that I was in France last summer during the Euro 2016, and which was the last major tournament before the World Cup, when Russian hooligans were on the rampage, and they were responsible for some of the worst of football violence. And they were not just drunk men playing around. They were hardened groups which at times looked like paramilitaries, and sometimes they looked like they literally wanted to murder English fans. And at least one England fan indeed ended up in a coma. And you could see others, lying unconscious on the streets of Marseille. So it's quite a worrying story.
They're intent on violence that has absolutely nothing to do with football. Well, that's the front page exclusive for The Sun today. Johnny, front page of the Daily Mail. This is something that really annoys me. I like to think I'm very good at recycling. I recycle every bit of plastic I can. But some councils are very fussy about what plastic they recycle.
Oh, including our council. And we attempt, like you, Sarah-Jane, to do the right thing for both our where we live and also our country, our world. But the fact is that 1 in 4 councils around the UK don't collect tubs or food trays. We are fastidious about keeping the nappies, because it's a nappy household, separate from the rubbish. But the rubbish does include plastics because they don't collect it, and we have that. From the bin men who come around and say we don't collect that, but not actually from the official sort of announcements on the website. So basically, they are really falling behind. We are apparently only 7% accept carrier bags.
Which surprised me. I thought I knew every bit of plastic now because I've been through it so much. But I didn't realise only 7% would recycle plastic bags. There you go.
Such a shame.
Learn a little something this morning. Right, we're going to have to go to the weather now. Very important news weather-wise today. Nabila, Johnny, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Kirsty's going to put you in the picture.